So, this is the midweek show, and are you a Fife homeowner or potentially a landlord? And are you thinking of selling your home or property in early 2025? Five properties selling in 52 days, then this is the show for you. So, let's Okay, so in this article, we are obviously going to look in a bit more detail about how long it will take on average to find a buyer for your Fife home, and actually how long solicitors will take to get you moved, which is a factor that's sometimes kind of not really thought about and considered in the whole property journey, something
Yeah,
that's often forgotten. But 52 days, a number you maybe weren't expecting.
it might be quite surprising to other people, but yeah, you're absolutely right about solicitors. It's something that's overlooked probably
Absolutely.
the
Definitely not factored in. But of course, during this wee show, we've got plenty of facts, statistics, and graphs for you. But there's independent research from Denton House that shows in the last 12 months, looking at every UK estate agent, so not just in particular Fife, the UK, there is over 1 million sales agreed and 816,299 to be exact exchanges and missives. On average, it has taken 73 days from the property coming onto the market to become sold, which is actually up from 67 days for the 12 months ending in June 2024. So some numbers that you maybe weren't expecting in there, jumping from obviously 67 up to 73. However, if we were to flip that, it then has taken 113 days from the sale being agreed to completion. And when we say completion within like Fife within Scotland, we're saying like missive signed, money's
yeah,
transferred, keys handed over. And obviously we know in the UK it's a slightly different process, but for us, that's what we mean by completion, which is in fact an improvement on 117 days. So there's a flip with that again
yeah,
for the 12 months ending in June 2024. Of course, those numbers you may be thinking, that journey is a long one, and also a journey that's not guaranteed all the time, as nationally, only 53.6% of UK homeowners who placed their homes on the market in the year 2023 to 2024 actually sold and moved, which you may be thinking, okay, what happened what happened to the other chunk of people in their homes? And that is the remaining 46.7% actually coming off the market and not selling for whatever reason. There's always different circumstances.
so
But
unsold basically. Yeah,
unsold, just coming off the market. And again, that's probably not what you were expecting.
yeah. I mean, that's quite interesting. And as you say, it's quite important for people to remember that when we talk about obviously, when you see obviously not just sold, but actually the property is exchanged and the people have moved on, because
Yeah.
properties can be sold and then until obviously, like you say, we conclude missives and things here in Scotland, um, and then actually exchange. It's like so that is important. So it's the sold and the actual moved on thing.
Mhm.
But the remaining, as you said, like what was that, 46.7% actually
Yeah.
coming off the market and unsold. I mean, that's quite a lot. I mean, it's near enough half if you look at it in
Mhm. Yeah.
rounding up terms. So that's quite a lot, and I think that's quite interesting. And we're going to look a wee bit more about that today, obviously, I would imagine. But then
Mhm.
it brings you to the question I think you really need to think about finding the right buyer. And I think that's really the
Mhm.
first step to having a successful sale of your property is to find the buyer. And that
Mhm.
first step in finding the right buyer is for you to then be in a position where you're engaging with your estate agent, us, and
Mhm.
naturally we're always happy to assist and engage as much as we can with sellers. So having an agent who you could work with and then really develop that pricing strategy and the price point. We spoke about that a couple of weeks ago about having your property priced appropriately and for the market that it's in, and having that proper marketing strategy, a digital marketing strategy, things that are tailored to the individual property and its target audience. Like, if it's a family home, if it's an apartment in the city, or wherever you may be, have your property and its marketing strategy set up correctly to target your target audience, which would be, if it's apartments, is it students, is it working professionals, if it's a home, it's a family, a working family or something. That kind of, you need that kind of thought process, and it's so important to attract the right buyer in the right situation. I'm sure you'll agree with that, and that's what you will advise your potential clients when you go out to see them as well, Sophie.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Landlords, is it a buy-to-let kind of area? You'll obviously know those areas in particular, same as when you'll go out to obviously sale listings as well. You'll know what demographic are we dealing with here.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I mean, you give us a wee bit of rundown on figures there of sales, for the UK and things to break it down. There is some other recent independent data that shows over like the last 3 months, and Fife, for example, has taken an average of 52 days to reach an agreed sale, and that's obviously what we led in with today. And again, just to reiterate, that's sold subject to conclusion of missives. However, as we have spoke about in recent shows and articles that we've published, the Fife property market is far from uniformed as such. It's more like a kind of fly's eye thing. It's got countless small and distinct micro markets. We've got inland countryside, and we've got the seaside in East Neuk, and then we've got St Andrews, and then we have bigger built up areas like Dunfermline and Kirkcaldy, and so we do have that kind of micro market regions. So and that's how the Fife's broken up. So I think if we reflect on this independent research and things, which focuses exclusively for us talking today on Fife, it's fascinating to kind of observe how these different price segments as such, or micro markets, are currently performing, where we look at the average time it takes to secure a buyer in the Fife area, and then the average time to find a buyer in the last 3 months in Fife. And for those properties that have agreed a sale on them, now they run down as follows. So we'll say like anything up to about 100k, you're looking at about 45 days. 100,000 to 200,000, you're looking at 38 days. 200 to 300,000, you're looking at 57 days. 300,000 to 400,000, you're looking at 71 days. 400,000 to 500,000, which is 500,000, 75 days. And then 500,000 up to 1,000,000, you're looking at about 143 days. And then over 1,000,000, funnily enough, we're looking at 138 days.
To be precise as well.
Yeah. So we've got a graph and things to go with this. So you want to share this, and we'll have a wee look at what we're doing. So these kind of figures, here we go. We'll have a wee look at that. So so if you look at that, the average time to sell a property in Fife, and that's properties sold subject to conclusion of missives in the last 3 months. Now this is all agents, this isn't just us. And then down the side here, you've got the average time to find a buyer in days on the left-hand side here, if you're looking at this. And then along the bottom, you've got the red block there, which is under 100,000, which is up there, like I said, 45 days. The next one, which is like that orangey colour, is 100,000 to 200,000. And as I said there, that is 38 days. The yellow is 200,000 to 300,000, and that's 57 days. The green is that's for 300,000 to 400,000, so that's 71 days. And then the 400,000 to 500,000, which is the lighter blue colour, that's 75 days. And then we jump up, the dark blue is 500,000 to 1,000,000, which is 143. And then just slightly below that, over 1,000,000 is 138 days. So that's quite a clear depiction of I run through these figures, but it's good to see it visually. For me, anyway, I'm quite a visual learner. And I'm sure everybody else that's watching will be like, okay, I can see that trend a lot better there in that graph. And that depicts it a lot clearer, Sophie.
Definitely. And then if you were to look at then, because obviously we do like to analyse, you can then analyse the same statistics and determine then which price band had the highest ratio of properties sold. So again, a run through.
Yeah, you run through that with us then. Go on in.
Yeah, let's have a little run through. So under 100,000, there was 359 sale agreed. So throughout all of these, just remember when we say sale agreed, that's subject to concluded missives.
Yeah,
Just so I don't need to keep saying it for
we, we,
everyone.
we need to be clear on that. Yeah,
Yeah, we're just going to say it for all of them and make it clear from now. So under 100K, 359 sales agreed, which is 19.93% of the properties sold in Fife in the last 3 months.
yeah,
Then the next bracket, your 100 to 200, is a massive jump up to 704 sales agreed, which is 39, just over 39% of the properties sold in Fife in the last 3 months. Then it comes down a wee bit for the price brand in 200 to 300 with 429 sales agreed, which is 23.82% of the properties sold in Fife in the last 3 months. Then we have the 300 to 400, which is 191 sales agreed, which is a 10.61% of the properties sold. Obviously, you can start to see a trend here that as we go up in the price brackets, obviously sales agreed comes less, just with obviously affordability and as the price gets higher. Because then when we get from 400 to 500, you have 58 sales agreed, which is just 3.22% of the properties sold in the
yeah.
last 3 months. Then your 500 to your 1 million is 51 sales agreed, which is 2.83% for the last 3 months of sold, subject to concluded missives. And then over 1 million was just 9 sales agreed, which is 0.5% of the property sold in the last 3 months. So that is a
Okay.
breakdown for each price branding. And obviously, as we go up, the sales agreed come down a wee bit. Although there was obviously a high jump for the 100 to 200, just because that's
Yeah,
obviously your affordability range. Obviously,
yeah,
just the demographic. Obviously, it's a great, you can get a good sized family home. Obviously,
yeah.
within that price band, there's a lot that kind of goes in that depending in which area. So that's why you do see that increase for that price banding.
Definitely. And I think just as obviously I run through the figures there um for previously then and showed you the graph as if by the Blue Peter and prepared earlier. Here is the graph that goes with the numbers that you just run through. And I just think
Yeah.
it's so good because it just depicts it so much clearer.
Mhm.
So I run through in the first graph the average time to sell a property, and you've just run through 5 properties sold subject to conclusion of missives in the last 3 months, and that's by the same price band that I was running through. And you can
Mhm.
see there, obviously, like you said, the lower ones, which are in the blue, which is like the higher value, and then you could see the 100,000 to the 200,000. That's like about 39.1% there.
Mhm.
And then the reds that under the 100,000, which is just shy 20%, which
Mhm.
take up a large portion of the entire market in Fife. And then obviously as you go up the price band in, the amount of properties sold in the last 3 months reduces slightly because there's a longer time for them to sell. So that's quite a good graph there as well.
Definitely. So, Richard, then based on all of that, you've secured your buyer.
Yeah.
What happens next? What's next in the journey?
So yeah. Well, obviously to start with, we were speaking about. I had said obviously finding the buyer.
Mhm.
So then next you're going to obviously you said something that's overlooked as the solicitor.
Mhm.
And that's something that we need to think about as well. But when you've secured your buyer and you think about what happens next, selling your property in Fife or indeed anywhere, it brings challenges and involves coordination with, a diverse group of professionals, and whether that's, mortgage brokers, solicitors, your estate agent themselves, and that could result in notable differences in probably timelines and,
Mhm.
things that are going to factor in completing on your Fife property sale compared to possibly others. So let's go and talk about obviously the solicitor, because that was something that you mentioned at the beginning, and it is something that is overlooked by people, and that is something, and one of the most common delays because people are unprepared or they haven't appointed somebody or they haven't provided enough information to their solicitor, and it could really hold back a sale.
Oh, absolutely. You need to instruct your solicitor and potentially a mortgage broker, depending on what
Yeah,
your finances look like as well. What
yeah,
steps have we taken with that? Plus, as well, when we're looking at all of this, something again that isn't always factored in is we don't know what their workload look like and what their timeline looks like. So that's why as soon as you've made the decision, I'm going to sell, get them instructed, get your, as we always say, get your ducks in a row, because we also don't know what their workload looks like, that they need to then factor this in that they maybe weren't expecting. Obviously, we can recommend top solicitors to assist with your Fife sale. As the seller, your solicitor will start preparing the initial, legal documents for your property with your input as well. And then they would then forward them to your buyer's solicitor, things like think about your title deeds and, is there been works done and completion certificates, what guarantees are there? It's all these things
Yeah,
that you maybe don't think of, but it's all part of the process. And that's why it's not just a quick kind of tick box exercise, and it's not as quick as maybe you want it to be, and it's not as quick as, right, I've accepted my offer, I want to be out in 3 weeks, where again some people think they can say, right, I want this to be my entry date and just pick a date in the diary. Again, as much as obviously we would love for that to happen, it's not always the case, because there is all of this behind it. Obviously then there's the legal work and the survey, because obviously after receiving that paperwork,
yeah,
your buyer's solicitor will request local searches from the local authority and land registry. Again, it'll be slightly different, maybe Fife based and UK based, but again, factor in is if you're moving from the UK and you've got to sell in the UK and buy in Fife, you might have to have two different solicitors as well, a UK one and a Scottish one. So that's then also needs to be factored in. Again, something that people don't think of. You've got the land registry to ensure there's no planned developments like roads or airports. Could they be impacting your property? These searches can also take a few weeks to return. It's not just a quick overnight thing, during which the buyer's solicitor may raise questions as well with your solicitor. All residential properties in Scotland are required to have a valid home report. Obviously, we would never list your property without that anyway, so that's kind of ticked off. But how long has it been on the market? Do we need to get a refresh as well? Something that needs to be factored in. This is provided to potential buyers by the estate agent, and is valid for 12 weeks. If it takes longer than this to find a buyer, it's only required to get refreshed once a written offer has been accepted.
at the point of
Again,
accepting the offer, yeah.
yeah, not something that obviously everybody is aware of, especially if obviously this isn't something you do every day. The valuation as well, depending on how long it's been on the market, and this is where we talk about pricing as well, may be reduced if there has been a substantial amount of time to get an offer, and also dependent on what that accepted offer is.
Yeah.
In some cases as well, and we do see it often, if you are requiring a mortgage, sometimes that particular lender will actually want to get an additional survey done, especially if, again, there is a big difference in accepted offer and the initial home report value.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of people don't get that and they don't understand it, because obviously, but if you've got somebody who knows what they're talking about advising you, like, this is what may happen if, if offers are coming in, like you say, way above the asking, then
Mhm.
the person that's going to be lending on that is going to insist that maybe another survey is done, just to kind of settle their curiosities and make sure that they're doing things right from their end as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you might be thinking, what's next? So
Yeah.
what is next, Richard?
Yeah, well, and we keep reiterating, obviously, sold subject to conclusion of missives. Now, if people are watching from overseas or in England, it might not be something that's quite obviously common to you to hear, or even it might be totally alien to you, because that's how we practice here in Scotland. And conclusion of missives is something that's so important, because basically that is the point when the legal transaction has taken place, and there's no coming back from that. I mean, there is, but there's a lot of penalties that go with it. And generally, that's where your sale will be obviously set in stone, and then your exchange follows just very, very soon after that. Once the mortgage and once the survey and like you say, the legal work has all been done and it's cleared of any issues, both buyer and seller sign the contracts leading to the conclusion of missives. So, and that happens between the buyer and seller's solicitor. Now, there is a legal binding contract with the conclusion of missives, and that commits both parties to the sale. But then you have to wait, because there is still one more step to go. So
Of
conclusion of
course.
missive, and like I said, just to follow that, is completion. And completion is when the money and keys are actually transferred and handed over. Now, typically, this will take place 1 or 2 weeks after conclusion of missives. There's not a set time scale for that, but it's roughly between about 1 and 2 weeks. Although since lockdown, completion can occur sometimes on the same day. Now, it's not that common, but it could happen. Because the market and things change so much during that time, it can happen. But typically, it still generally happens about I would say about a week beforehand. But at this point of conclusion of missives, then completion, the buyer solicitor sends the purchase funds to, this is on completion, not on conclusion of missives, the buyer's funds to the seller's solicitor. And once they have then received that, they notify us, the agent, if we are the key holders, and obviously the seller, that the keys can be handed over to the new buyer. Now we get that quite a lot. We get a lot of buyers coming in where it's like, it's my day for completion. It's the day for completion. It's handover, but we can't actually legally hand over the keys until the solicitor has instructed us that we can do that, because funds have actually exchanged and completion has happened. So that's something as well. And obviously, your agent and things should, I mean, your solicitor should make you aware as well, but your agent should really be able to inform you of all this information and that whole timeline of events and how it should play out. And so you're very clear as the seller. And also, if they've got the buyer, that the buyer's aware that they're coming in to collect their keys once we've been instructed by the solicitor to release the keys. So that's really very important things. Conclusion of missives and completion, two different things that happen close together at the end of the sale.
And then, of course, if you're and then if you're buying or selling with Fife Properties, you then get your moving in box as well. So when you collect your keys, you get your moving in box as well as a nice little gesture.
And if it's been it should be an enjoyable process to go through, and that's quite a nice thing at the end, to give a gift to both your seller moving on to their property and of course the buyer moving into their new property as well.
So then in turn with that, with everything that we've kind of discussed, to kind of give it like a debrief, if you like. In Fife, it currently takes 52 days to find a buyer, step 1. And then 80 days from instructing solicitor, step 2, to completion and fast forwarding to step 5. So that's the kind of debrief in a short. In summary, then, you should anticipate average, we'll use the word average loosely, but anticipating waiting 5 to 6 months from the day the sale board goes up to the day you move out and lock the door for the last time. That's kind of what to anticipate. So if you're considering selling your home in Fife, or you're a Fife landlord, obviously Richard's your guy for that, looking to sell potentially a buy-to-let, then again, is it going to be looking to obviously sell with property with tenants in situ? And that's something obviously you can advise and discuss more in, and then feel free to reach out to Richard, pick up the phone, drop him a message, informal, no obligation conversation.
Of course,
that's definitely obviously your remit doing that.
If it comes to obviously buy-to-let properties that have been part of a portfolio, they've got tenants and things, there's several different avenues, ways you could approach that. Like you say, sell with tenants in situ, or obviously then sell or sell with vacant possession. But there's a whole process that you would need to follow to be able to do that as well. So obviously, if that's the situation, then feel free to reach out to myself to speak about that. In general, obviously selling, you do that day in, day out, Sophie. So if anybody wants any information or any help on the whole process and how to be prepared and get ahead of the game with that, of course, reach out to either of us. We're always happy to have, like you say, that no strings attached, no, like, obviously, there is no obligation to have a chat with us about anything. We're just happy to kind of to help people in the journey, because it can be so confusing, and not having the right people or having the right information could make it quite a stressful situation, and it shouldn't be, as long as you have the right people advising you. So I think that's really good. But I think that the 52-day thing's quite a good number in comparison to other parts of the country and things as well. So I hope people found that quite interesting, and how we broke down the last 3 months, and how you broke down the last 3 months in the graph, and then how I obviously looked at the average time for selling in the other graph and how that depicted that. I hope that helped as well. So that was good.
Yes, perfect. Well, obviously, as always, any questions, comment, let us know. But that's been the midweek show. Until next week.
For that, Sophie.
Yes, good. Until next week, take care, and we will speak to you all soon.
Good. Catch you later.